Welcome to the Leadership Exposé podcast. This podcast is for purpose-driven leaders at diverse levels and organizations around the world who are seeking to scale and transform their leadership, to level up their business, and to create an impact on the lives of people all around them. Business and boardroom topics, trends, innovation, transformation, and the intersection with leadership is the focus. We enable success. I'm your host, Stephen Paul. In this episode, we meet Lester Clarke, the COO of a key oil field and energy services company. Lester is an accomplished C-level leader who brings small company speed and agility coupled with large company discipline, rigor, and compliance. Lester brings diverse leadership and organizational skills and experience in complex environments over the last 2 decades in the energy industry across the globe and 4 years in the telecom infrastructure industry in the African continent. Africa has an immense potential, and today we'll hear from Lester about leading through energy transitions as a business topic, but also leadership in Africa and the globe, and the approaches towards driving cultural change in African businesses. Lester, welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Stephen. It's a real pleasure to be on your show and to be able to both share and learn on your podcast. Thank you.
Wonderful. Lester, just before we started, we were exchanging where we're located. And as you know, I'm based here in London, UK. And obviously you've got ties to the UK as well. But where are you based? Where are you calling from today?
Well, at the moment, I'm calling from Abuja in Nigeria. I'm here. I go between Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt in Nigeria with the company that I'm working with. As you said, I'm Group CEO at OilServe. OilServe is a company been in existence for over 30 years, and is Nigeria's leading provider of integrated engineering, procurement, construction, installation, and commissioning services, EPCIC as we call it, and employing over 1,000 people. The reason I'm in Abuja is that our current flagship project is the Akk Gas Pipeline. This is a gas pipeline that's running from the south of Nigeria to the north of Nigeria, and is the biggest infrastructure project. It's about a $2.6 billion project. The biggest gas infrastructure project for some time in Nigeria, and is really going to drive a gas revolution in the country, and just enable us to start that just transition to a much cleaner energy environment.
So we're definitely keen to hear about the project and the transition as well on the energy side of things as well. But keen to hear about your leadership journey. Where did it all begin? And tell us that intersection with that professional journey and the personal journey, and then we'll come into the business aspects.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was born in the northeast of Scotland, and I think like all good Scots, I'm always looking out to the world, the wider world, and I think from a very young age, always wanted to travel. I studied mechanical and offshore engineering in Aberdeen, and later coupled that up with an MBA. I actually started off my career. I mean, oil and gas is really integral to the Aberdeen economy, the oil capital of Europe. And I started off working in the diving industry, then transitioned into working in the drilling industry with Baker Hughes, or a big multinational oil and gas service company. I stayed with them for 16 years, and that was really building up on many different roles. Very interesting time. Worked in sales, worked in engineering, worldwide product management, worked across roles in Russia-Caspian area when I really cut my teeth, if you like, in P&L management and managing large and diverse multicultural teams. And then, as you said, I've been in Africa now for the last 12 years. Firstly with Baker Hughes, where I was operations director working across some 15 countries. And then for the last 9 years, I've been in Nigeria, always in key operations roles. I really like the challenge of chief operating officer type roles. So I was doing that for an oil service company, and then transitioned into the telecom sector, which I'd like to tell you a little bit about. And then into this current role with OilServe, managing the group operations.
So the domain of chief operating officer, or the operation side of things, has got a lot of intersections between telecom and oil and gas. Are you seeing that, or is it completely different? And when you look at it with a third dimension of being in Nigeria, for example?
They're different but the same. I think the telecom infrastructure business is an incredibly challenging business within Nigeria and any developing nation. The company I worked for, IHS Towers, did a tremendous job. Grew up from nothing in the early 2000s, and was listed on the New York Stock Exchange back in 2021. And at that time was I think still is, was the largest African IPO on the New York Stock Exchange. But as far as leadership goes, I'm a very quality, health, safety, security, and environmental focused leader, and that's an absolute necessity in the continent, because there's just so many challenges. There's new challenges creep up every day. A lot of the people are not particularly well educated or trained. So you've really got to make sure that you build up your team of leaders in a team. You can't have enough. It doesn't matter what people are doing. If you can just educate them in how to lead, in how to ask questions, in how to give away just a little bit of their authority, so that they build up future leaders in the company. It goes a long, long way to helping everybody in the organization thrive.
Yeah, and Lester, the topic of leadership and skills, very, very important, and this is one of the challenges globally, but also within the African continent as well. I was speaking with several business leaders, and they mentioned that one of the significant risks is around the technical and skills gap from a leadership perspective, especially if international players continue to divest from the region. So countries like Nigeria, considering increasing and strengthening local oil and gas workforce capabilities, but also bringing in global leaders like yourself, and investing in talents and skills, are very, very important in order to grow that sustainable energy business. So there is a direct relationship between skills capabilities within the region, but also that leadership aspect. So how are you seeing that? Are you seeing a lot of those risks, and how that translates to energy transition as well?
Yes, absolutely. I think you've hit on a very, very key point, Stephen. Absolutely, more needs to be done to educate and train Africans. I mean, Nigeria has got a very clear brain drain. In the telecom sector, it was very, very pronounced. In oil and gas, it's very pronounced, especially in amongst the engineering disciplines. And the likes of the UK is a big part of that, right? Because a lot of the options of getting people in from Europe have kind of dried up, and Nigeria now is a key shopping ground for talent. But that is not doing the the African continent any good, because they absolutely need these skills. And I think it comes, we can't wait for the governments. The governments are not going to act quickly enough. And I think it takes key industry players to collaborate. I was speaking to an old colleague of mine that works for a competitive firm. And I always like this term competition, you know, both cooperation and competition. And I think it's a case of we need to look at that competition for people, because there's key areas, you know, people in quality roles, in welding excellence, in engineering excellence, that companies could really get together, especially if it's project-driven companies. We're not always all busy at the same time, and really collaborate in certain roles to create a training environment which is common to all the companies. So it doesn't matter whether you go into one company for one project or another company for another project, you get consistency in that training and development. And then it helps everyone at the end of the day. So there's ideas like that I'm exploring within Nigeria to try and alleviate some of those challenges. But I think it really does lie on the larger companies, the larger indigenous companies like OilServe, but also the multinationals. You know, they do a very good job of training up their own staff. Some of them do a very, very good job of helping companies as well, indigenous companies, and help them bring up their own people. But I think they could do more, and really need to do more.
And we'll come into the people and the culture and the leadership aspects further in the conversation. Keen to hear about the energy transition and the transformational aspects, and especially from a regional perspective. What trends are you seeing locally, and how does some of the global impacts actually have a dent on the region as well in the spaces of energy transition?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very, very interested in the whole energy transition space, especially in Africa. I find it absolutely fascinating. You know, a lot of people, especially in the West, think that Africa can, like they did in telecom, right? They never ever had a wired telecom system, jump directly to mobile, and think that they can do the same with energy. They don't need to go through the transition of you know, coal to oil to gas to renewables. Can jump straight to renewables. But I'm afraid it's just a fallacy. It just can't be done. The infrastructure is broken. There's no grid. So it does need to be a gradual process. And I think, you know, gas is really going to be a key part of that. Nigeria just launched their energy transition strategy last month, actually. Yeah. And, you know, they stated very clearly that gas needs to be a big part of that energy transition, in line with the Sustainable Development Goal 7 of having a affordable power for all by 2030, which in itself is a very, very stretched goal. But as I say, you know, projects like the Akk Gas Pipeline will be a key enabler for that. In fact, at OilServe, we've just changed our purpose. Our purpose now is accelerating the energy transition and improving African lives. And that's really speaking to bringing in the infrastructure, building the infrastructure, perhaps even owning and operating the infrastructure, and then bringing economic growth to the region through cheaper energy. Because at the end of the day, much cheaper gas supplies will make the region far more competitive. I think the other piece of that improving African lives is on the health side. Today, there are literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of diesel generators pumping out highly toxic fumes right across the nation. And if we could even change, half of those by 2030 to gas, then all of a sudden you've got 30% less CO2 emissions. You've got no soot in the air, as it's a clean burning fuel. You've got 80% less nitrogen dioxide, and no heavy metals. So, it's going to improve the health of the people as well as create a much more efficient economic growth vehicle.
Yeah, there is that intersection between the economic, the commercial, and the social responsibility aspects. And it's very interesting that you've actually changed the purpose of OilServe, which is very much resonates with social responsibility as well. So that's definitely very good. So I'm hearing that there is a drive towards investing more in renewable projects, but at pace, which means considering investing in these types of projects, but also you mentioned about infrastructure, so which means also maximizing some form of intra-continent and international gas opportunities between the region as well as global as well.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you see how badly the gas security of Europe, and I think that's one thing. Living in Africa, perspective, looking at it now, and I worked in Russia a long time. I know the Russian people. I love Russia. It's one of my favorite countries. It really breaks my heart to see what's going on. But when I look back and I see, Germany was really throwing everything into Russia with Nord Stream 1 pipeline, and then building a second Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline, and doing this despite all the warnings of the USA saying this is a real danger to energy security. They carried on. And far simpler option to diversify and de-risk the security of gas supplies would have been to go to Africa and build one of the two pipelines which has been on the table for many, many years, which is the Trans-Sahara pipeline through from Nigeria over the Sahara through Egypt and into Europe. That one is a little bit challenging because it goes through a lot of terrorist country. There's a lot of security issues. Whether that one will ever go ahead, I'm not so sure. But then the other one is an offshore pipeline running right around the coast of Africa from Nigeria to Morocco, and then upwards and into Spain and through into Europe. Now, that would be an equivalent of being a Nord Stream type pipeline, but it will take about $25 billion. It'll take maybe 25 years to build. It'll have a 30-year payback period. And I just wonder if, Europe and the world are going to be ready for a 50-year investment into a fossil fuel pipeline.
Yeah.
Now, the good thing is that Europe has woken up a little bit and said, well, actually, gas is needed. Gas is green. So I think that one's very positive. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see more talk, hopefully more action on actually doing that, because it's a good long-term solution, and it would help not just Europe de-risk on the security side. It would help the whole economy of all of these countries in Africa, because they would all contribute their own gas or take gas offtakes from the pipeline. It would help the whole economy of the sub-Sahara region boom. So it'll be interesting times. It's certainly, you go back a year, you wouldn't have seen this even thought about being talked about.
Yeah. So leadership is a big component for driving that type of success. So people have got different perceptions about leading in Africa, leadership in Africa, and doing business in Africa, cultural change, and so forth. You're in the heart of that, and you've been there, a decade or more. Tell us a little bit more about your experience or your views about leading in Africa, and how leaders transform culture.
Yes, it's, Africa's got a long history of holding its people down, and a lot of Nigerian businesses continue to practice that. It's very much a hierarchical leadership style. So people don't think for themselves in general. They wait to be told. Mm. And, my view is that you will never build a large, successful business by waiting for people to be told what to do. It's got to be the other way around in leadership, right? You've got to empower your people so that they tell you what they need to be able to do their job successfully and to be able to grow their area of the business. And I've very much taken that. I took that. I learned a lot when I worked in Russia as well. Because although, Russia's got very, very well-educated people, it's got the same kind of hierarchical structure, management structure as Africa. But I kind of cut through all that. I said, rubbish, this is just not true. I don't understand. Why do you say, well, people need to be talked down to? People are people. They've got their families. They've all got their personal pride. They've all got their personal ambitions. Do we really think that just because they work in a different part of the world, that they want to be told what to do versus being encouraged to develop themselves and take pride in themselves? I just don't believe that. Mm. So, a number of factors I think I build on. And one of the most important in Africa is to eliminate the fear culture. Mm-hmm. When you're working in a country which has got, official unemployment figures of 35%, but in reality, youth unemployment probably run at 60 or 70%. There is a fear culture because people are scared of losing their livelihood because there isn't much else out there. So you've got to really try and make sure that people are not afraid, that they do actually take that extra step and will actually start taking some responsibility. And then it's all about alignment, instilling a will to win in people, providing them with proper incentives and recognition, creating excitement about the vision, about what is possible in the company. If we're all working together and we're all contributing, giving clear ownership, and letting them have a vision, or letting them tell you what success will really look like. And by doing that, and then building in place much better, I hate to call it monitoring, but it is kind of monitoring, but having short-term goals that are all aligned up to the big picture, and providing transparency. We've got some very good tools. We're using Viva Goals in OilServe. And there's transparency right the way through the management layers. So everyone can see what I am working on, and if I'm actually doing those things. I can see people in different departments and what they are working on. So it creates that peer pressure as well, because people see other people making progress, and if they're getting dragged down in the small stuff and not concentrating on what's important, it can give them a bit of a kick to get moving.
It's also that level of accountability as well that's tied into that transparency that you mentioned. So you can hold other people accountable, but other people also get that level of accountability because they they're bringing that transparency right across.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Correct.
So Lester, I mean, you've touched on this, but is there anything more that you want to add in terms of a story or experience that that comes to your mind that has resulted in a highly positive outcome, maybe from the things that you have actually introduced or that you've experienced?
It's not. Let me share one story, because I think it's quite a good Africa story, and this is sort of pivoting away a little bit and on customer relationships, and I think it's an important thing to share as well, is the values of customers. A lot of people think Africa, think Nigeria, think, well, the only way that you go and do business is by going and bribing people, and right. I mean, there's all these misnomers, and yes, it goes on, right? Yes, it's a highly corrupt country. I mean, as I say, I've worked here, I've worked in Russia, I've worked in, these are from a compliance side, very, very challenging areas to work compliantly, but you can do it. So I'll share a little story around that. It was a number of years ago when I'd moved to Nigeria, and there was a smaller oil and gas operator who was going through a very difficult time due to fraud-related issues. So the lead company, their partner company, had been playing all sorts of games, and there was massive fraud. And I met with a new COO, who was a very very pleasant lady, and I was asking, because we were due tens of millions of dollars, and I was there to see how we could get our money back. So I went in initially, and I sat and I listened, and as the story developed, I actually understood that they were victims. So it wasn't just us and other suppliers that were at risk of losing a lot of money. They were victims in all this. And I think that sort of changed my outlook. I went from somebody who was coming in as it was a group CEO there. I was thinking, man, we need to get our money. This is going to really kill us from a cash flow perspective. And also our banks wouldn't be too happy. But as I listened, I thought, there's no point in me going aggressive in here, because it's not their fault. They're actually going to be struggling financially. At that time, the oil price was way, way, way low. And I went, you know what? I understand. I said, I want to keep touch. I want to make sure I understand how the story is going along. And let's see how we can work this out for the benefit of everybody. And I had numerous meetings with her over, probably over a couple of years. Actually, this went on. But at a later meeting, she called me in, and I came. I was working in Lagos. She was in Abuja, and she called me in, and she said, Lester, you were the only one that showed empathy for us. Because everybody else were coming in saying, we need the money, we need the money, we need the money. You were the only one that really, truly sat, listened, and understood what was happening. And that lesson transferred. We ended up getting about $80 million worth of business directly. I mean, it was a negotiated bid. It was done without any competition, but it was understood it was going to be a hard negotiation, because it's business, right? But that was a very, very valuable lesson to me. It was one that came from my nature. It wasn't anything I was consciously doing. But always have empathy for not just your customers, but also I do a lot with my people as well. There's one thing I always take to doing is, if I hear that a good person is leaving in the company, and it doesn't matter what level they are, I said, send them to me. I want to
Yeah.
speak to them.
Yeah.
And the first thing I always say to them, I said, look, don't think I'm trying to persuade you to stay, because I'm not. I said, but I've made some mistakes before in my career of leaving when perhaps I shouldn't have.
Mm.
And I just want to make sure that you're doing the right thing for you. As
Mm.
I'm quite happy, I love to see people grow, but I just want to make sure that you're making the right decision for you.
Mm.
And I then just have a conversation with them. And if it's, if it's a great opportunity and they see that that's going to be a good move for themselves and their family and their career, shake hands in a way. But a number of times, I think I've had people just thinking, well, why am I really moving?
Yeah.
And and it hasn't been because I'm, just giving them an extra few dollars in their pay packet. It's been because they've thought about it a little bit differently than they were originally.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And the topic of empathy you mentioned, very, very critical. And also you mentioned about leaving and, celebrating with them, but also delving into that conversation with them as to whether it's the right, whether they're doing it for the right reasons, and for them, they've thought about it, and bringing that bit of mentorship to them is such an important aspect. So that demonstrates a lot of leadership. Let's say, I mean, aside from things that we talked about before around energy transition, transformation, and leadership in businesses, are there any other important topics or trends on your mind these days, and also from a global perspective, also from a regional perspective, that you feel impact people, businesses, the boards, and so forth, and what they need to focus on?
Yeah, I think one area that again I'm very, very interested in, and is on the sort of sales and business development side, which I think in a B2B world now is changing dramatically. I think the way that that we sell and promote our companies is changing dramatically. It's something that I'm bringing into to Oilster. This whole idea of thought leadership, of social selling, of getting efficient market intelligence. It's gone are the days when we were sitting in meetings in companies and everybody was there. You can't get all of the decision makers and influencers in one place anymore. So, how do you do it? Do you go and fly around each of their areas? Do you go and visit them in their homes? Do you go to all the conferences that they're all going to visit? It's getting very, very complex, because you will never capture them all. And so, I mean, in Oilserve, we're kind of going through a little bit of a transition in the sales and business development as well, and trying to see how we can claim our space in the EPCIC area as thought leaders. So we're looking at social selling. We're looking at how to better use CRM tools, how to do stakeholder management better. We're going to be setting up a little studio within the facility, so we can do podcasts, we can do presentations that doesn't involve people sitting down staring at one another. That's actually got a professional setup, like like you're watching the news almost, right?
Yeah.
So something a lot more engaging. And it was interesting when I started pitching this to the management team, and I was speaking about tools like LinkedIn and switching away from spending so much money on conferences to doing a lot more thought leadership content on social media. One of the guys said, "Yeah, but that's not really a thing in Africa." And and I said, my response was, "Yeah, but are you watching how it's growing?" And what is your alternative? Would you rather we wait until everybody else has done it and then we jump in and do it? Or would you rather be the leader within the pack and the leader within our business area and have a competitive advantage by being the first, learning, making sure we tailor the content, we show off all of our capabilities, because our ambitions lie out of Nigeria. We do a little bit of business outside Nigeria, but not very much. So we're not very well known. Very well known company in Nigeria, but not outside. So I mean, what a better way of getting yourself known around the continent than through social marketing and social selling. Yeah. And I think it's going to be true. Corporate communications must become corporate conversations.
Yeah.
It's not about one-way communication anymore. It's about creating these conversations like we're doing today.
Yeah.
And really learning from that.
Yeah. Lester, we're coming to a close very shortly. Is there any closing messages or a challenge to other leaders that you want to make on any topic, business, personal, anything that you feel that would rev up the other leaders?
I was reading your own bio, Stephen, right? And I read that you're a fan of Winston Churchill.
I am, yes.
and many years ago, when I was in Russia, I really came across my favorite quote, and the Russians loved this. They absolutely loved it. And I use it all the time now, and I think it's very appropriate for the need for leaders showing real grit and determination in the face of all of the challenges that we go through, especially when working in developing markets and through all this inflationary issues we're going through just now, energy crisis and everything. And that's when you're going through hell, keep going.
Yeah, keep going. Exactly. Keep going. Yeah.
And I think for leaders, I think it just sums it up, right? I mean, you've just got to knuckle down, do it with a smile on your face, be pleasant to people, have empathy, train up the youth. We're in the middle of training up 30 young graduates, and again, this is all part of our people strategy, because we all the good talent unfortunately has been sucked out. So we need to look after the future of the company and look after the future of the next generations.
Yeah, Lester, thank you very much for sharing that, those words of wisdom, and for being with us here today and sharing your journey as well. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Paul. Stephen, it's been a pleasure.
Wonderful. Okay, folks, thank you very much for listening in, and stay tuned for our next episode, where we hear from the chairperson of Chambers of Commerce here in the UK. We'll hear more about which region she represents. So stay tuned and stay on for more information, as well as a bonus offer for you that you can't miss, the links of which will be in the description of this video. Thank you. Hey, I hope you enjoy the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You're now seeing this part of the video also because you consume some of my content, insights, and teachings. Maybe you've been to my LinkedIn page or website, or seen other social media ads, or listened to my podcast. I'm Stephen Paul, a business and transformational executive coach, strategic advisor, leader, and board member. I've been in diverse roles, corporate executive, entrepreneur, and worked with businesses and firms of all sizes, built and launched businesses, created high-impact boards, and so forth in 4 continents. I get it. I've been there, done that, but what is different is I bring a unique perspective and a playbook. I've helped 100+ business leaders just like you to scale and align their leadership, top teams, the board, and overall business for growth. Leaders like Ivana from a medium-sized company in the EU who grew 150% and expanded globally in under 5 months. After she started to work with me over facilitated sessions in an initial 3 days, I helped fine-tune their strategy and align their leadership team and board to be a cohesive driving force to achieve their dreams and outcomes. I want to teach you the same thing and more on how to scale and align your leadership team and board so you can increase your business growth and value. Get clarity on what is the next right strategy for you. There are multiple ways we can work with you. Number one, click the link for a free, non-obligatory 60-minute initial strategic session. Let's get a feel for your dreams, your vision, your challenges, and let me convert that into a route map for you where we can co-develop and co-pilot. Number two, enroll in an innovative and intuitive digital online course that I have created to help you transform. It's called Unshakable Resilience. It is the ultimate program for individuals and business leaders like you who want to be equipped at a personal and professional level to respond to any form of challenges or in crisis situations and take on opportunities with grit, resilience, and build a mindset of success. In essence, you want to be unshakable, thrive in crisis, take on opportunities in the face of adversity, and build a success mindset. So, click the link below to learn more on how I can personally help you individually and your firm to scale and align your leadership team and business and pivot in a transformational way. And for you to experience this, whatever the challenge you're facing, get in touch with me. Let's discuss, and I will share my insight rapidly to enable your transformation. Click the links below.